Hello, my name is Faina, and I have dedicated the last 7 years to honing my craft and fine-tuning my strategy.
Welcome to Trading in the Zen, where we help traders find their groove. I'm your co-host, Louise Nonwheeler, a trading psychologist and multi-award-winning clinical hypnotherapist. Join us weekly as we delve into the trading world, exploring psychology, well-being, health, and mindset. Through expert insight, interviews, and actionable strategies, we help you as traders unlock the mindset needed to navigate markets with confidence and achieve peak performance.
At Trading in the Zen, we believe that there's much more to trading than numbers and probabilities. Like an athlete, a trader should operate in their peak state. Each week, you will have mind-blowing interviews as well as actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become a better trader. Thanks for spending time with us today. Now, let's dive right in. In this episode, we interview Shelley Lewin. Shelley has become a highly sought-after personal and professional relationship development specialist who is regularly featured as an expert in the media. Since 2006, she has helped thousands of individuals and couples, as well as Fortune 100 company leaders, to transform their relationships with themselves and others. Hello, and welcome to Trading in the Zen. Today we have a special guest, Shelley Lewin, all the way from South Africa. Welcome to the show, Shelley.
Thank you, Faina.
Welcome to the show, Shelley. It's lovely to have you.
Thanks,
So, Shelley,
Louise.
tell us a little bit about yourself. Please let us know what it is that you do. Just tell us a little bit about your journey, things that you're interested in.
Sure. So I know that your audience is probably particularly interested in high performance. So I can say that my background has been quite varied. I started out actually as a professional model. You wouldn't say so, but believe it or not, that was where I started. And although it was very lucrative and wonderful to travel around the world, it was deeply unfulfilling for me. And it started me on a different adventure and journey. I decided there was a series of events that happened, and I decided to do something completely different and went into counseling psychology, changed my career completely, and started a private practice to see couples. And that counseling practice is still going today. So that's 20 years on. But what happened in that, because my focus was on couple work and relationships, I then ended up being invited into the corporate space to work with leaders and execs who were really challenged by their relationships. And so I was working with leaders that were struggling with their professional relationships, whether it was relationships above, so managing up with their line managers or C-suite or execs, or relationships to the side with their peers, or leaders with their direct reports. And that actually, I then got involved in doing that work in a corporate space. And now I have my foot very firmly placed, one still in personal relationship development and one in professional relationship development, working with leaders globally around the world. So that's also been going for about 18 years now.
Wow. So speaking of personal relationships, what would you say the number one thing men complain about, and what is the number one thing women complain about?
I'd say that women complain that men don't listen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that men are wired to fix. And there's actually what studies have shown is that in the male brain versus the female brain, when it comes to communicating, there are 6 centers in the female brain, 3 in the right and 3 in the left. So when women talk, they're processing what they're saying. So it's through the talking that the thinking happens. And what they're looking for is a sounding board and someone to say, oh, that sounds difficult, or, how do you feel about that? But what men tend to do, and their communication is very different, is that they listen to solve problems. So when they hear a problem, they immediately go to, well, this is what you need to do. Well, I've got an answer for, and they go into fixing. And so what happens is that they're, men and women tend to be speaking across each other and not really listening. So I would say that's generally what women complain about. And then with men, I would say probably the one thing that I hear quite a bit is about desire discrepancy, which is that, men generally are aroused in a very different way to women. And they have, I'm going to say, generally speaking, healthier appetites and libidos. And so one of the biggest complaints I get is around that there's a difference in desire and how to manage and navigate that.
That's interesting.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. I never knew that about the female brain. It's you learn something every day, don't you? What made you, how did you get into the journey of being a relationship coach?
So I'm going to say that I was my first real case because I was so bad at relationships. I had many very challenging, toxic, unhealthy relationships. And I actually did an assessment once, personality profiling assessment. And you do these personality profiling and it tells you where your strengths are and when your weaknesses are. And it actually told me that I was probably, so the outcome was actually that I'm a thing. So there's different names for each of the different personality profiles. And basically I'm deeply analytical. And it said that, which is great in some contexts, but you'll probably be useless in relationships. And it actually told me that would probably be my area of development, is that relationships would be where I would struggle the most. And I couldn't have agreed more at the time. I just didn't get relationships at all. So I thought, well, I'm going to do what I know to be a strengths-based approach, which is to lean into the thing that you're good at, to figure out the thing that you're not good at. So I was very good at analysis. So I decided that I would use my analysis to understand how do relationships work, because I'm not getting it. It doesn't come naturally to me. So that's what I did. So I applied myself to understanding how relationships work. And the thing is that if it comes naturally and easily to you, it's not something you have to think too much about. It just happens. If you're a very social person, a very outgoing, if you're people oriented, and if you are naturally social and extroverted, then it's not something that you probably even think about. But if you're very introverted and analytical, as I am, probably very suited for trading, actually, it doesn't happen naturally for me. So I had to learn how to do relationships. And I decided I would become my first client. And if I can figure it out and make this work, then I would probably be able to pass this on, this knowledge on. So that was when I decided to go and study and to learn about it, and to take those learnings and to apply it to myself. And so here I am 20 years later. I learned it, I lived it, and now I'm giving it. So I've been married for 20 years, and I have a very healthy, happy home. So I think that it qualifies me not only because I've done it professionally, but also managed to pull it off personally.
Fantastic.
So I have a question on this subject. So what is how we get frustrated with your partners, our partners, what is the healthy way to and rather not even a healthy way, but a productive way to turn the frustration into a point, either connection or a point of growth? Is there a tool that one can turn that kind of like when you're about to blow up or when you're not seeing eye to eye and you're going in circles? Is there anything one can do, whether it be step away, take a breath, I don't know, 20 push-ups? Is there anything one can do before things escalate and things are said and irreparable damage is done?
So, you've made a good point there about the walking away. So the idea is that 1 + 1 = 3. So when you put any two people, there's this space where the two people overlap, which is this us space. So, think of it like this. There's a me, there's a you, and where we overlap in that little place, that together, if this was a Venn diagram, that little piece in the middle there is us. So it's its own entity. It's a third entity. And what happens is the me and the you are either contributing or contaminating the us, helping or hindering the us, neglecting or nourishing the us. So when the me or the you are frustrated, when you have very strong emotions, you're probably tainting the us space. And so if you want to, and you may be right, so people get very caught up on, well, I'm right. And so it becomes a battle of a competition, who's right, and if you want for me or you to be right, it's usually the us that fails, or that loses, rather, I should say. So if either one of you is frustrated, full of strong emotion, what you want to do is to perhaps remove yourself from the situation, process the strong emotion. What is this emotion about? What's at the root of it? Why am I feeling this way? What has triggered this? How did this come about? So emotions are energy, energy and motion. You want to process the emotion, just let that energy pass through you until you've calmed down, and then you can return back and have a conversation about it, about what you're feeling, why you're feeling that way, so that you're not actually destroying the us. So ideally, what you want to always do is prioritize the relationship, that your relationship is regarded as this precious, it's this sacred space. Think of it like a garden. So you've got two gardeners, and you're both trying to create this sacred, beautiful, mature garden that you feel at peace and harmonious and relaxed when you enter into that garden. But if you're going to go into the garden when you're angry and start bashing things and obliterating things and destroying it, then the garden is going to get destroyed very quickly. So no one's saying you shouldn't be angry or feel what you're feeling. All feelings are valid, but not all behaviors are. So feel what you feel, but don't take those behaviors out on the relationship.
Yeah.
Interesting point to the garden point. I've heard somewhere that in a relationship, there should be a flower and a gardener. When you have two flowers, it does not work. When you have two gardeners, it does not work. So do you think that's true?
Well, in that metaphor, I certainly, and I have a book that I wrote called Uncomplicated Love, and I talk about the relationship being the garden. And so I do, from that perspective, think that having the two gardeners is actually what you're striving towards, which is that sometimes you're going to have one person who's available to nurture and nourish the garden, and if the other person is sick or busy or absent, then we sort of take it in turns. But you've got to continue to nourish this garden, otherwise it will just die, and that's why I like the garden metaphor, because we understand that if you aren't taking care of a garden, it will die, unless it's a very mature garden. So if you have a new garden, when you have two new couple together that are new, you have to really invest in the relationship. You've got little seedlings. They need a lot of time and attendance and nourishment for the seeds to start to grow. So you can't just neglect it. Perhaps 10 years, 15 years down the line, if somebody, and this is what can happen is, let's say somebody gets sick or they lose a parent and they sort of zone out and disappear for 5 months because they're lost in their grief. The relationship can handle it because the garden is well mature by that point. But a young relationship very rarely will survive something like that.
Mm. And I think, the 2 C's that I feel are important in relationships or relationship is communication and compromise. I think they're very important, aren't they? So going slightly off track, as you know, our audience is generally financial traders. Now, financial traders can be very self-critical, very hard on themselves, can't they, Faina, as we know? And
the negative feedback loop is infinite.
Yes. And that can happen for various reasons: losses, not sticking to the trading plan. I mean, what advice would you give to a financial trader who is repeatedly showing evidence of self-sabotaging behavior, being self-critical? What do you feel would be the first steps?
Okay, so there's the idea, I would say, is to focus on the execution of the process and not the accomplishment of the outcome. So the execution of the process is around building your mastery. So building your mastery, regardless of whether it's gardening that you're trying to become masterful at, whether it's trading the market, it's going to require failure and lots of failure, because if you aren't failing, you aren't learning. We only learn through failure. So to become masterful in anything, and I actually saw, because the Olympics are on at the moment, there's been quite a lot of interviews with high-performing athletes. And there was an interview with Roger Federer that I heard, and several different world-class athletes. And basically what they've said is the consistent message that I've heard is that you actually just need to be consistent. That's what most people aren't, is that they take the fails and the losses and they take it personally, when actually that's just part of the journey. And in order to become one of these world-class athletes and performers, the failures is how you grow, because it's when you stop and reflect. So I would say, as long as you are learning from your failures, then that's great. What do I need to do differently, or what can I experiment with next time? So use the failure as education. And that's really to just be consistent about using the failure as education and learning from it, and learning and just keep going. And if you just focus on the process of mastery, then I'm not, this idea of, if I can just touch for a moment on being self-critical. Self-criticism is when you take a failure personally. So basically what you do is you blame and shame yourself for not doing something well. Okay, so instead of seeing it as, oh, so that's a learning, you're making it about you. And usually that comes from perfectionism, this idea that I should be perfect in some way, that I should be winning every game, or winning every tournament, or making money in every trade, that whole idea, which is a completely unrealistic expectation to have. So the reframe that I would offer is to, instead of working and striving for perfectionism, which is this unrealistic expectation, is to strive for excellence and mastery. And basically, when you strive for excellence in mastery, we understand give me any master of anything, master chef, master artist, master musician, master composer, find me any master that hasn't done it consistently, year in, year out, year in, year out. That's what mastery is. So if you don't have the passion for something, you're probably not going to be able to do that consistency and continue over time, because it's got to come from something more than just a desire to make money. Do you see what I mean? It has to be about that you find this fun, that the process for you is enjoyable, that you love the learning, you love the education, you love the growth, you love the challenge, that's what you need to be focusing on, that you're getting better every day.
Yeah, I heard somewhere that failure is just a redirection. So it makes you sort of try to find a different way if something is not working. So for traders, you see our feedback loop is really quick. You make a decision and you immediately have a monetary consequence for the decision you make. So, and it is also counterintuitive because we put ourselves in harm's way, which most people are trying to get out of the harm's way.
Yes.
Is there anything? And so we get in this negative feedback loop, and when that happens, you start to take it into the next day and the next day, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then you're going to have a string of losses because you're already coming in a compromised state. Is there anything physical one can do to stop the feedback loop, right? Because no matter how many times I say to myself, you're doing great, you're doing great, you're doing great. If you don't really believe that you're doing great, you can say that as many times as you want. It's just not going to have an effect. Is there any physical thing one can do to help themselves?
Well, what it sounds like what you're saying from what I can hear is obviously you're putting yourself in a very high risk environment. Okay, so it's the context is important. So, if I was a beginner swimmer, okay, and I said to you, right, you're going to learn to swim, but I'm going to throw you in the ocean, in the ocean, in a storm. Good luck. Okay. And now I'm expecting you to but you don't only have to stay afloat, you've also got to navigate in the dark, in the ocean, to find some island 10 kilometers away. And you're not a good swimmer. You've basically just learned to swim. So it's a very high risk environment. And I think that where the challenge comes is the expectation that you have of yourself in an environment like that to thrive. Like if I did throw you in the ocean and you could barely swim, what would be a reasonable expectation to have? So I think it starts with having reasonable expectations of ourselves first, and to focus on the progress that we're making, and to celebrate the small wins. So how long would it take? What's a reasonable expectation to have of yourself to learn to trade? So you tell me, what do you think would be the runway you need to give yourself to say?
Honestly, between learning how to trade and consistent profitability, there's a huge margin there. You can learn how to trade, but to be continuously profitable, that varies on a person and how fast you learn and what it is that you're trading and who your mentors are, and do you have support, and how stable your mind is, which is probably 95% of it.
Okay.
Are you in charge of your mind? So I think it's so personal that is what trips people up, is because sometimes it takes a very long, 10 years, about 10 years without seeing any consistent profit.
Okay, so you just answered the question, right? So I heard multiple factors contribute. That, it wasn't one thing that you said there. There were several things that are going to contribute towards towards your success. And you said that the time frame is that you're looking at 10 years. So if somebody knows that this is a 10-year event that I'm, then don't expect to be winning. That any wins before 10 years or any consistent wins before 10 years is actually phenomenal. So I think that comes back to that expectation piece. And if you aren't,
I'm so sorry. There's also the social media and all the people who are putting out things out there like, click here, you'll be rich tomorrow. This is so easy.
It's
Look
not
at
easy,
my
yes.
profits. And I think that in itself, it's so confusing because then there's a comparison between you and everyone else. And they're not telling you the truth. They're showing you their best day. And so
Exactly.
that is where it becomes really challenging.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a little bit like eat this and you'll lose 10 pounds of weight, kind of like these adverts that you see, so we understand when it comes to health and fitness and exercise, it's a journey. And we don't expect to go from there to there in 2 or 3 weeks. We do know if you were to be obsessed about it, and every morsel of food that you put in your mouth, every drop of liquid that you put in your mouth, you can probably do some kind of massive transformation in 3 or 4 months. But very few people are going to be obsessed with trading, and it's not a 3 or 4 month thing either. It's a much bigger, grander, as you said, depending on what you're trading and what you're learning, and it's a high risk environment. So there's all sorts of variables that don't count when I use the analogy of the weight loss, because that's quite, we know what those variables are, but this is a high risk situation. So it's, and maybe not everybody is probably cut out for this type of work, I would say.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Going slightly off track, how do you help your clients shift their sort of mindset and perspective into creating sort of new habits and behaviors?
So it starts with first recognizing the story you're telling yourself. What are the narratives? So what I would do is we look at where is the person, what is the behavior that they need to change? Where do they get stuck? So, our life generally illustrates where we're doing well and where we're thriving and where we're not doing well. And so we're going to take this area that you're not doing well and we go, right, I want you to tell me every single thought and story that you tell yourself about yourself and about the situation. So, and I do this exercise with my clients around love and relationships. And, it'll be like things like, men are untrustworthy. People always leave me. I'm not lovable. I just give me everything. I want to hear every single, and it's about getting it out, hearing yourself say these things. You need to know what the story is. What is the narrative that you have about yourself and about the situation? So first we need to know, what are we dealing with? Then what we do is we try to understand, what would a new, different belief, what would you need to believe to be true in order for you to be successful, in order for you to be optimistic, for you to be hopeful, for you to be encouraged, And so what we do is we go through each of those beliefs and we create a new list of beliefs that we need to have, because and I'll give you an example around finances, because it's something that I hear a lot. So I have heard people that have a challenging relationship with money, for example, they will tell me that they used to hear their parents saying money doesn't grow on trees, or that it's easier for what is it, for a poor man, so something about a rich men don't go to heaven. It's easier. Yeah, sorry, I'll get it just now. But the idea is that that rich men go to hell, or that wealthy people are not spiritual, or something like that. So these are the stories that they have about wealth and money. So what happens is, if that's what you believe to be true, and it may not be a conscious thing, it's probably something unconscious, that you heard, that you were raised with. So what happens is, when money comes to you, if that's what you believe to be true, then you will self-sabotage. You will you don't want the money coming to you if you think you're going to go to hell, that rich people go to hell. Then when, as the money comes in, you're going to spend it or blow it or do something like that, because in your mind, your subconscious doesn't want you to have money. So whenever you have, and you spoke about self-sabotage, whenever we are self-sabotaging, it's always because there's a root belief and definition that that thing is not good for me in some way. And if you don't know where that's coming from, so sometimes it requires, really looking back at your childhood, significant experiences that you had, significant trauma that you've had. What did you make those traumas mean? And often it comes back to your relationship with money, and it's often not a healthy one. So you kind of want to heal your relationship with money, definitely, before you start going into something like trading.
So if you say to yourself things like, let's say someone says, I never have any money, this kind of stuff, I keep doing the same thing over and over, and of course this was going to happen to me because this always happens to me. How do you rewrite and dialogue with yourself of that nature? How would you take those? Because this is the things that traders say to themselves the most. I always do this. I never have money. Of course, it doesn't work for me. How do you reword these into a positive statement so that you can start rewriting that story?
Okay. So whenever we have never absolutes, like never and always, so I would say that that's also a big red flag. When you have absolutes, is that you're looking to create scenarios where it's like all men are untrustworthy, for example. So, and I'm just sorry, that's the one that comes to mind. That's the what we were speaking about earlier. So the idea is to say, what is a realistic? So many people can be untrustworthy. So it's around it, that it's not about all men. It's about how you're attaching an all or a never or an always to something very specific. So you said, I never have any money. So I bet if we looked at your life and we were, okay, really? You never have any money? So how have you gotten into trading if you've never had any money? How do you feed yourself every day if you never have any money? How have you got clothes and sitting under a roof if you never have any money? So what you're doing is you're exaggerating to make a point. It's about really needing to explore the absolute and to change it to, sometimes I overspend, or sometimes I make poor choices. So you're restating, and then you want to change it to, I make better choices with money. So you want to convert it to what you do want it to be. So instead of saying, I never have any money, it could be, when I have money, I make solid choices, or I am learning to be discerning about my finances. I am creating wealth and learning how to keep it. So you're changing the story. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. Because I think we're also affected by the recency bias. And for us, when something happens to you a lot, you stop seeing outside of it's just the recency bias. Because now you're going,
Yes.
well, this always happens. But if you widen the picture, it doesn't always happen.
Always.
Sometimes it
Exactly.
doesn't happen. So that's a good way to take out. I really like the idea of taking away the extremes. Or how did you put it? They are
the absolutes.
Absolutes.
Yeah.
And not speaking in absolute, especially, and actually probably relates to partners as well. Telling someone you always do that, or you never listen to me. It's the same kind of idea taken away, because there's no way they never listen to you.
Exactly. And so it's an expression. We use absolutes out of frustration. It's part of how we express ourselves. So you can really get curious about that. Really, is it always? Is it never? And if you want to be, and this is where the analysis comes in, if you're going to be, if you want to be accurate, let's really let's figure out if this is true. Do I never listen? Do I never have money? Is that really true? And to just interrogate that a little bit instead of taking it as fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. That is really helpful.
Yeah. I think it's having that self-awareness, and then when it doesn't serve or support you, is start to challenge that, to change these beliefs. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
And I would ask you, so let me ask you this. You tell me, maybe both of you can come up with a few statements yourself. What do you think you would need to believe to be true about yourself to be a great, masterful trader? What is a narrative? What would be a good story and a narrative and a belief to have to be a really masterful trader?
Well, I don't trade anymore. I'm a trading psychologist. But
oh, I see. Okay.
If I was to go back to trading, I just need to believe that I'm competent. I can absolutely do it. It's having that self-belief, that unwavering self-belief. And no matter how many times you fall, I'm going to get back up.
Great.
But for me, I would have to be passionate about it again. Like you mentioned. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm confident. I can do this. I can learn from my failures. And Fahina, what would you say?
I'm stronger than my circumstances.
Great.
One individual trait does not define me.
I love that. Excellent. Exactly. Yes.
So because we attach self-worth to that, and because that outcome of this trade is now attached to the dream, and the dream is to make money. So when that one thing goes wrong, your dream is compromised, right? And so you lose sight that it's just an incident. It is not, it's just an incident.
Exactly.
Also, we trade probabilities. If you want a certainty, then you need to get a daytime job that gives you a 9 to 5.
Exactly.
And I always say to myself, the probability was not on my side. Instead of saying I'm stupid, the probabilities did not play out. If in fact I did everything correctly, it just didn't go my way. Or I would say, I've been here before and I'm still here.
Exactly. So you've just shared with us some brilliant, that's what I mean by narratives. It's the story you tell yourself. And either that story is going to be uplifting and encouraging and build your self-confidence and self-efficacy to remain in the game. So I'm going to just share this idea with you about the infinite game. Are you familiar with the infinite game?
No, I was just going to say we should be more playful with ourselves and not so all-encompassing and destructive. So, and you just said infinite game, so interesting.
Exactly. So the idea of a finite game and an infinite game. So a finite game is when you have a winner and a loser, and we know the rules of the game, And, you know, if we decided we're going to be playing a game together, someone has to win and someone has to lose. Okay. An infinite game is where the idea is to stay in the game as long as possible. So business is an infinite game, and you can't expect that business is going to just go like this and win every year, win more money, win. It doesn't work like that. It's going to go like this.
Cyclical.
And so the infinite game of trading is to stay in the game, is that there are going to be losses. As you said, it is about this probability that you're better than your last trade, or you're learning from whatever your last trade was, whether it was a win or a loss. And you have to see it as an infinite game, not, it doesn't have an end point. What you're wanting to do is to become masterful, and you're only going to become masterful if you see this as a 10, 20, 30-year plan, not I need to win and be rich by 2025.
Perfect. I think that is such good advice, isn't it, Faina? It's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You would be a great trader.
You would.
You would be very level-headed.
So Faina and I, we love to read. That's one of our passions. And so we want to talk about your book, Uncomplicated Love. If you can show us your book.
So this is the book that uncomplicates love and relationships. So for people that it doesn't come naturally, and really, it's a step-by-step guide for building a thriving relationship. And what I've done is I have uncomplicated it by showing you that relationships and love is an art, a science, and a practice. So the art of love is compatibility. The science of love is what is known as attachment styles, which is a very specific science of attachment and how we attach to people. And the practices of love are the skills of relating, relationship competency, like communication, for example, is a skill, learning how to communicate well. So the art, science, and practices, and the idea is that the me and takes ownership for their art, science, and practices, and to connect and bond with, ideally, hopefully, someone else who takes ownership and responsibility for what you're bringing. So, you know, prioritizing the relationship, make sure that you are contributing, that you are helping, that you are nourishing, that you're being the best gardener that you can be, that you are being a quality partner. And so when you do that, then love will emerge. And I also speak about it's not about having a relationship the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. That's how we've traditionally measured relationships, but rather to measure it in health. So coming back to that garden metaphor, is that you want to have this beautiful, nourishing, sacred space to go to. There's no point in being a relationship if it doesn't make you feel alive and bring you any peace and harmony to be in that relationship, then, you know, then what's the point? So that's what, yeah. And by the way, it is a workbook from the point of view that there's lots of reflections. So at the end of every chapter, I ask, you know, to help you to process. So at the end of every chapter, there's like these self-examination activities that you can take yourself through this process to help you to figure it out as you go.
Fantastic. Where is it? Can they do it on Amazon or where?
Yes,
where can
so it is available on Amazon.
Okay.
You can also download it on for Kindle and order it from my website. So I'm known as the Relationship Architect and TRA, and so tracoaching.com.
Okay.
So tracoaching.com, you can order it on there, and I'll be very happy to send you a copy.
Oh, thank you.
Aw, thank you.
We'll put all the links, your links to the website, to the book, in our descriptions as well on all major platforms.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
So it has been an absolute pleasure to have you,
Yes.
Shelley. I've learned so much, actually, quite a bit about myself. So I'm going to go and process
Amazing.
some things. And so thank you. It's been very educational. It's been inspiring, motivating, and I'm sure our listeners will go, they'll be writing some notes, won't they, Faina?
I'd love to hear
And
from
I would
anybody.
love to read the book because there's
Yeah.
always something to learn.
Yeah.
And that, you know, we're in a constant, that's trading as well. You never stop learning. Just when no one has it figured out. And I always tell people, don't feel bad. Anyone says that they have a financial market figured out is lying to you. No one has all the
Absolutely.
answers. So be gentle with yourself. Nobody knows.
Mm.
We're all just guessing, So that is I guess the message. Just be more playful and not so, I think we
Yes.
get so hyper
Absolutely.
focused.
So I
And
talk
then-
about this, there's two mindsets which I speak about in my book. The one is Olga and the one is Ralph. So Olga, OLGA, okay, open to learning and growing always. All right. So an Olga mindset is open to learning and growing always. And a Ralph mindset, RALPH, is refusing to allow learning and progress to happen.
Wow. I love that.
So
I'm gonna start telling people, don't be a Ralph.
exactly. So that's exactly. So in the book, I'm like referred to, that's a Ralph mindset. That's an Olga.
Interesting.
So I want to be an Olga in the world and an Olga mindset. And I think that if you're attracted to the kind of work that you do, you have to have an Olga mindset.
Mm. Wise words.
That is
Absolutely.
really,
Yeah.
that's gonna be my new mantra. Don't be a Ralph. Be an
Don't
Olga.
be a Ralph.
Be an Olga.
Exactly.
I love that. That's powerful. I'm
Yes.
actually going to buy the book. I'm
Same.
really,
Ah,
I think there's going to be
amazing.
so much.
Thank you so much for guiding
inspiration.
us.
Lovely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Louise. That's awesome.
It's been a pleasure.
Lovely to meet you both. Thank you,
Yes.
We've
Faina.
come to the end of our show. Thank you so much for being our guest, Shelley. It was a wonderful
Thank you.
conversation. And we're gonna go get your book after this is over. Have a
Absolutely.
good, I don't even know if it's morning or evening for you. It's afternoon for me.
It's night for me.
It's night. Good
afternoon.
night to you. Almost
Aw.
good night to Luis. And thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. See you next
Thanks.
time. Thanks, Shelley.
Bye.
Bye.